taking a brief look at the program, I realized that, and please correct me if I am wrong, that I am the only speaker who deals exclusively with hagiography.
Yes.
If this is so, then please let me briefly give you a review of some basic terms, okay, and delineate the confines within which I will be placing today's topic, okay. Now, if, you know, most of what you heard about here was based on, you know, historical sources, okay, and Zachary, who was the previous lecturer, in fact, one of the first students of the Gennadios Byzantine summer school, back, I don't remember how many years now, did something which is historical again, based on you know, historical documents. Now, if historiography in general, and we speak about you know, all the works that might be included under this heading, that is historiography, and related you know, sources and whatever, you know, might amount to, let's generously state, a number of, I don't know, 500 texts, purely historical, and I don't know, some thousands of primary sources like documents and that kind of things. I mean, you can understand that the whole thing, I mean, you know, post-Byzantine and both Byzantine and post-Byzantine would possibly amount to something, as I said, 500, maybe 1,000, I don't know, but in any case, when it comes to post-Byzantine and post-Byzantine hagiography, the number of texts encompassed by this term goes up to a 5-digit one. Whether it is, you know, starting with 1 or 2, I'm not sure. I don't know. I won't be accurate if I will be telling you that, you know, 10,000 is a limit, the lower limit, or maybe more. So, what is included in this extremely rich material? First of all, hagiography developed from the early centuries of the Byzantine Empire, either in the form of full-fledged biographies, such as the life of St. Anthony the Great, which was written around the mid-4th century by St. Athanasius of Alexandria. That was a fully developed biography, which also, you know, put some stress on the element of encomium, praising in particular characteristics, the virtues, the miracles, the fights with the demons, and all the stuff of the saint. This is the one extreme, the fully developed saint's life. Then you have on the other side of the spectrum, very brief texts like the, you know, the Apophthegmata Patrum, the sayings of the Old Fathers, or the 1 or 2 or 3-page long narratives, which are useful for the soul. They're good for your soul. Narrationes anime utiles, as they are called. The content of the saints' lives proper is mostly a full biography of a canonized saint, or brief episodes in the case of the Apophthegmata and the Narrationes anime utiles, which usually are extracted as self-standing texts, stories from a life proper, from a saint's life, longer saint's life. Now, in between these two major forms of hagiographic texts, we may place also collections of miracles, minologia, entries in synaxaries or synaxary notes, and so forth. Collections also of saints' lives, the so-called, again, minologia, and yeah, and collections of translations and things like that, like the minologion of single metaphrastes, for example. Okay, now, the primary aim of all these texts is to provide and praise the traits of sanctity of a celebrated individual. However, incidental contact with their current reality both in the wider sense of historical contingency and the narrower one of humble daily life, as it is experienced by the hero of the sense life, is at times much more vivid and real than the images afforded by historiography proper. Okay. Accordingly, one can take hagiography as a reliable, to a certain extent, that's it, okay, but ancillary indicator of historical circumstances, and use, as François Hadken would have put it, hagiographie au service d'histoire. Okay, therefore, using hagiography in this capacity, in this sort of characteristic side of, its character, I will briefly try to explore a few historical snapshots that may emerge from those texts, from the hagiographical texts, that are related to the Balkans. Okay, so the question I will be answering is, what do hagiographies tell us about the Balkans? Okay. What is told in a kind of incidental, actually, occurrence in these Byzantine hagiographical texts. However, since I emphasize the fact that, the material is vast, here I will focus on texts of the early period, for the Balkans at least, but texts that are placed within the chronological confines of the golden period of Byzantine hagiography, that is between the end of the 8th century up to the year of the 11th century. Okay, but let us first have a brief overview of the major events, historical events that occurred. Oops, what's happening here? It seems that, okay, I got, yes. The major events happening to the north of the major Byzantine centers, that is Constantinople and Thessalonica, in the period in which we are dealing, okay, with which we are dealing. And this is, yes, please share. Okay. Yeah. I started from 680 because, as you will come to realize, when we are talking about Byzantium and what is north of Byzantium, basically what you see in the Balkans is the Bulgarian nation and the Bulgarian operations starting from the end of the 7th century, 680. Okay, big Bulgarian, the first major Bulgarian expedition. There may be some earlier ones, but this is where I start from. Although I don't need this date. I mean, I won't be referring to this one, but I will give you a few references to events that appear from then on. In the year 712, as you see, the Bulgarians appear before Constantinople. In 763, we have the Battle of Anchialos, in which the Bulgarians are defeated. 792, the Byzantines were defeated by the Bulgarians at Markele, a place in modern Bulgaria. In fact, goodness me, it's difficult to find where it is. It's between some places called Venets and Karlobag. I don't know if you know it, how close to the Danube it is. Oh, yeah, no, it's not that close. Anyway, from what I see on my map. But that's fine. Let me see if I can share the screen, the other screen. And the other screen, which I could possibly share, is this one. Yeah. So the place might be somewhere here. Okay. Well, to the north of Constantinople. Let me see, let me make sure. It should be Varna is Bulgaria is here. Yeah, it's somewhere here. All right. Please. Let's go back to the close to this place in these areas also have taken place the other major events like the defeat, the Byzantine defeat of 1180, someplace in Pliska actually, by the Bulgars of Krum. 813 also the Byzantines are defeated at Versinikia, and that led to the resignation of Mikhail Rangave, if I remember rightly, and the ascent to the throne of Leo the Armenian. 860, the Kievan Rus attack Constantinople. 863, Cyril and Methodius arrive at Moravia and start their, evangelizing work. 864, the boys of Bulgaria converts to Christianity and becomes Michael. Takes the name Michael. 896, Simeon of Bulgaria defeats again the Byzantines of Bulgarophigon. 913, Simeon is crowned king of Bulgaria by the Patriarch Nicolas I Mystikos. 917, the Byzantines are defeated again by Simeon at Katasirte. 923, Hadrianople is captured by Simeon of Bulgaria. 927, eventually the Bulgarians make peace with the Byzantines after Peter succeeds Simeon. And then 941, the Russians plunder Bosphorus. And on 955, 957, the Russian priestess Olga is baptized Christian. Then we have the defeat of Sviatoslav at Dristra, which we happily visited with the last, 2 years ago, with the summer school on our way to Constanza, the Rostolland, the Dristra. And by then, Bulgaria was annexed to Byzantium. And then at the 985, we have the Bulgarian revolt and the beginning of the campaigns of Basil II against Samuel, which culminate with the 1014 defeat of the Bulgarians at Strimon. These are the major events of the period, and unfortunately, we don't have much, cultural interaction. I can possibly refer just one, not so much historical, but cultural. I may come to that later on. Sorry, it is really hot and I have to consume as much water as possible because my mouth gets easily parched. One of the cultural, if you like, exchanges of the period, and it takes place because before the Christianization of the Bulgarians, is presented in negative terms by the biographer of Nicephorus, the patriarch, or biographer called Ignatius the Deacon. In that biography, Ignatius incidentally speaks about an agreement between Leo the Armenian and the rulers of Bulgaria, the chieftains of the Bulgarian tribes by that time. And he says, in a kind of disparaging fashion, that the emperor concluded a pact of peace with the Bulgarians, not on the basis of solemn Christian oaths, but by performing a number of pagan rituals, by throwing herbs, or not herbs, grass on air, turning the saddle of a horse backwards and things like that. I mean, this is some kind of historically recorded gesture, if you like, which shows some, early non-Christian beliefs or practices on the part of Bulgarians. The thing is that the rest we have, what we have in other hagiographies is references to one or two of these particular historical events I have delineated here, I have listed in this screen I share with you. And this is what I will be reviewing in the next few minutes. The appearance of the Bulgarians is recorded by two of the earlier saints' lives of that period. The life of Kallinikos Patriarch and the life of Theodora of Kesaris. It's just a vague reference. There is not much, detailed information provided in these two texts, and an incidental reference to the 763 Battle of Anchialos is also referred to in the life of Saint Stephen the Younger, which supposedly is a text that comes from, was written around the year 812, 813, around there, before the beginning of the second iconoclasm. There is an incidental reference to the Battle of Anchialos. There seems to be not much, focus on this particular event. The later events, the Byzantine defeats by the Bulgars at Markele first, and then at Pliska by Krum in 811 and 813, seem to have imprinted an indelible vestige on the memory, it seems, and the conscience of the hagiographer, not only of the historians, but also of the hagiographers of the period. First of all, you have a saint's life which is entitled Martyrs in Bulgaria, and it lists a number of Byzantine captives who were kept in Bulgaria and eventually martyred in the hands of the Bulgarians, starting from the year 792 and advancing to the years. The same event is referred to by the life in the life of Peter Patricius. We don't have an exact life. We have a one-page, synaxary entry of his text in the life or in the synaxary of Constantinople. But the most, I would say, traumatic experience for the Byzantine conscience when it comes to viewing the North personalized in the nation of Bulgarians is the defeat in the Battle of 811. The battle, you remember that the Emperor Nicephorus was defeated. The details are really sort of painful for the Byzantine memory, for the simple reason that Nicephorus was victorious in the beginning, but then the soldiers took to plundering and were distracted. Then the Bulgarians counterattacked, and eventually, Krum managed to captivate and kill the Emperor Nicephorus. And legend has it that a goblet was constructed using the cranium, the skull of Nicephorus, which was also covered in gold. Anyway, lots of hagiographies of that period refer to this fateful event, starting with the life of Nicephorus the Patriarch, the life of Nikitas of Medikion, a very interesting abbot, iconophile abbot of the 7th of the 8th century, and the life of Nicolas Studitis, and the life of Nicholas of Confessor, and also the two lives of Ioannikios, the most celebrated saint of the was that 9th century Bithynia. Okay. The interesting thing is that it is so, I would say, impressive, the influence of this particular event, that in the margin of these hagiographical narratives, there developed also another short story, which is well known as the life of Nicolas the soldier, okay, but is also incorporated in the life of Nicolas the abbot of Studium. Practically, these are two different texts, but it's really funny how it ended up as official part of the life of Nicolas of Theodore of Nicolas of Studios. Now, the history of Nicolas of the soldier is more or less a short anime utilis story in which the soldier is hosted by a single lady someplace on his way to the place, to the Kliska, in order to meet the Byzantine army, and the lady tries to seduce him, and he refuses. Then and leaves eventually. And on his way to the battle, he sees a vision in which an angel shows him a battlefield strewn with dead bodies of Byzantines, and there's just an empty space among these dead bodies. And the angel asks him to describe, asks the soldier, Nicolas, to describe what he sees, and he says, yes, I see this one. Dead bodies and just an empty spot. And the angel tells him, this was meant for you, but since you declined the services of that lovely lady, you gained an extension of your life. And after that, Nicolas, returns back and eventually joins the monastic community and becomes a saint. But I don't know how it ended up in being incorporated into the life of Nicolas of Studios. Anyway, that's the first thing. But the other equally traumatic, I would say, experience for the Byzantine hagiographic conscience is the 813 battle, in which the Byzantines were again defeated at Versinikia. And supposedly its impact was enhanced by the fact that, the survivor of this, in fact, there were two survivors, the emperor himself wounded, and the emperor's son as well wounded, Michael, and eventually also the Leo the Armenian, who supposedly deserted or left his post and leaving the remainder of the Byzantine army to the defeat. And a number of Byzantine saints' lives record this event, putting the blame on Leo for the simple reason that he also turns out to become a prominent iconoclast, the one who reinitiates iconoclasm after the abdication and the death, in fact, of Michael. Abdication, sorry, of Michael Rangave. The life of Ioannikios, by one of the lives, actually, because we have two, one by Sabas and another by Peter, refers to this defeat. The life of Ignatius the Patriarch, again by Ignatius the Deacon, gives a reference to that. And also the life of Nicephorus as a sequel to this defeat, refers to the strange, customs which were observed by Leo in his agreeing the pact of peace with the Bulgarians. The interesting thing is that the life of Ioannikios says also that Ioannikios visited Bulgaria, went up north, and brought sleep to the eyes of the guards of Byzantine prisoners after that event, and led the Byzantine prisoners to freedom. Might be some kind of wishful thinking. You see, up to this point, North actually is just a threat for the Byzantine hagiographer. Okay? And it seems that it continues that way. The whole thing is interrupted by the missionary activity of Saints Constantine or Cyril and Methodius, 863. And the activity also of their two disciples, or related to them, the Saints Clement of Ohrid and Naum of Ohrid. In these lives, we have, a reference to the, first of all, the missionary activity, and I'll return to that soon after we finish with these sketchy events. And the focus of these saints' lives are first the missionary activity of Methodius and Cyril and Methodius, or Constantine and Methodius, and also the conversion of Boris to Christianity, which is given prominence in the life of Clement of Ohrid and now of Ohrid. The later events, the event of 896, the defeat of the Byzantines at Bulgaria, is recorded again by Mary the Younger and by Clement of Ohrid, but he simply, the hagiographer of Clement simply refers to the death of Saint Clement under the conqueror of the Byzantines, not conqueror, the victor over the Byzantines, that is Simeon. 983 is crowned, Simeon is crowned king of Bulgaria, but that escapes the notice of the hagiographers, and the rest is more or less undetected by the hagiographies I studied myself for this particular paper. The succession of Simeon by his son Peter in 927 is recorded by the life of Mary the Younger, but that's all. And then the later campaigns of Basil II against the King Samuel of Bulgaria are recorded by the life of Lucas the Stylite and the life of Athanasius of Athos. So this is what you see at first sight by a cursory reading of a number of hagiographies of the golden period of the Byzantine hagiographical production. And the thing is that there are a few more, particular details. And the references to the north, if you check, in fact, I'll give you a reference to you may have come across that book by Elizabeth Malamud, she wrote the Saints Byzantine. And if you see the references to toponyms to the north of Constantinople are very scarce. I came up with something like, let me see, on my notes, something like, oh yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 toponymics. In fact, most of them are located in Kherson, the Crimean Peninsula. Let me see if I can share my screen again. Yeah, they are located in this area here. Okay. So let me give you an outline of these minor issues that related to what is viewed as north. It is north, in fact, in Byzantine hagiography. First of all, the one key place, as you see, is Kherson here, which has already a reputation of a place of exile since earlier times. In fact, that was the place in earlier hagiographies in the life of Saint Martin, Pope of Rome of 641-42, is recorded as the place where he was exiled together with Maximus the Confessor and where he died. So that negative reputation is associated in hagiography right from the 7th century, and simply gets worse as we go on with the dates. I mean, it is, as I said, the place of exile, but funny enough, it also appears as the life of the place of exile in a kind of puzzling piece of hagiography, the life of three saints, the life of David, Simeon, and George of Mytilene, which is a very strange case of the text. Goodness knows if they were brothers, for the simple reason that something like 70 years or around there separate the birth of David from George, I think, if I remember rightly. But anyway, that kind, and Kasdan, in fact, has claimed that this is a much later text and has, combined in a kind of haphazard way and careless way 2 or 3 different lives. Anyway, in this text, which, with the exception of Kasdan, by most people is placed within the 8th century, George of Mytilene dies in Kherson, in an exile of death, as the Greek text runs, at the time of Leo the Armenian. Also, Joseph the hymnographer, another major figure of, and hero of hagiography, is exiled there, but eventually is recalled. And Theodore of Edessa also refers to this place as a place of exile, not only of saints, but also of the famous Justinian II, the one with the cut, the excise, the removed nose, the rhinotmetos, as it is, at least he known. Okay. But the positive reference also can be found in the with regards to the place of Kherson. For example, in the earlier life, the 812 life of Stephen the Younger, Kherson and Bosporus, another city also, not Bosporus here, but another settlement someplace close to Kherson, is mentioned among the places which are listed as still iconophile. They are listed as possible refuges, safe havens for the iconophiles in the midst of the iconoclastic, iconoclastic persecution of Constantine V of Rome. Okay, and also the other interesting thing is that Kherson is celebrated also in the life of Theodore of Studios, at the time when Theodore of Studios was sent to exile because he objected to the second marriage of Emperor Constantine VI, to a certain Theodote. I don't know if you recall this story, but it's a famous incident in which a number of saints are involved. First of all, Constantine VI was married to a certain Maria of Amnia, who was the granddaughter of the much celebrated Saint Philaretus the Merciful. Okay, you have come across that name, haven't you? And then he was not that happy with that marriage, and he forced his first wife to retire to a monastery, and he married one of her ladies in waiting, Theodote, who happened to be a cousin of Theodore of Studios. So Theodore was not happy with this event, and started complaining. I think he wasn't able to do it, but he got contact with all people associated with Constantine VI, and held grudges against the patriarch and the priests that had officiated this marriage, and he was exiled. But then the biographer of Theodore of Studius praises the bishops of Kherson, who in fact followed, and Bosporus, the Cimmerian Bosporus as it is called, these bishops followed the policy of Theodore of Studius and rejected the reconciliatory presents that Emperor Constantine VI sent them in order to approve of his marriage. So, you see, Kherson for some reason appears to be the bastion of the right faith, first of the iconophile camp, and then of those that are opposing the so-called Michian affair, okay, the adulterous affair. Right. Another place which receives positive press in the Byzantine hagiography of the period, and it is located in Crimea, is Sugdea, somewhere here as well. And in the early period of iconoclasm, it could boast of an iconophile bishop called Stephen of Sugdea. There's an interesting detail to this particular hagiography. For the simple reason that Stephen was not from Sugdea, was from Cappadocia. He spent some time in Athens, then he went to Constantinople, and the emperor, the iconophile Patriarch Germanus I, appointed him Bishop of Sugdea, and he accepted that, went there, although he was recalled to Constantinople, but eventually he died there and considered Sugdea as his homeland. Right. So it seems that, you know, even these northern places, for some people, do not sound that hostile. Okay. Now, there is another incident, however, and this is one but the last I will be referring to. And it's a very puzzling episode from the life of the Patriarch Euthemius, a life that was written sometime around the year 920, 925, and recounts the life of the Patriarch of Constantinople, Euthemius I, who was the one who succeeded Nicolas Mysticos and sanctioned, or at least allowed the dispensation for the fourth marriage of Emperor Leo VI. Okay. It appears that a very talented young man called Nicetas the Paphlagonian is very well known from hagiography and other literary sources. After a successful career in education, decided to leave Constantinople and sequestered himself someplace to the north of Constantinople. Today's Media, close to the border between Bulgaria and modern Turkey, somewhere here, if I remember right. You can see, I guess, my cursor here down. Let me just. Okay. Okay, go. No, it's not that big a place, but it's somewhere here. Okay. And eventually he was arrested and he was brought to the presence of the Emperor Leo VI. And Leo decided to tell him, to interrogate him. And what is puzzling to me is the nature of the interrogation. Why did you go there? Why did you take up residence there? And did you go in order to, conspire with the Bulgarians against me, or just to simply live alone? And the poor guy said that, I simply wanted to be by myself, undisturbed by the troubles of the lay life in Constantinople. That didn't bode well with, Leo VI, and eventually he had him under surveillance in general, and eventually he confined him to a monastery under the supervision of his uncle, the abbot, who was an enemy of his, of Paphlagonian. The thing is that Nikitas was an ardent opponent of the fourth marriage of Leo VI, but it seems that the Bulgarian connection was a nice pretext for Leo to keep torturing him. Okay, now we go to the last incident in which North actually plays a prominent role, and that has to do, with the Christianization or the expansion of Christianity to places much farther away from Byzantium, and we are talking about, places like Pannonia here and Moravia. Okay, and this is one of the major parts of the life of the two apostles of the Slavic people, who had a very interesting career. They were they were both very well educated. They were born in Thessaloniki, but they had a very distinguished career in Constantinople, in education and in public administration. And eventually they started their apostolic mission, entering Moravia around the year 863. They stayed there for 3 years now and started translating after they translating the gospel in the Slavonic language. It's somehow a matter of dispute whether they started, composing the alphabet, the Cyrillic or the Glagolitic alphabet in this place, or they did it later when they went down to Bulgaria for some time. But in any case, they started the translations. Then eventually they went to Rome, and they took supposedly an official commission by the Pope to proselytize these areas. Eventually they moved to Pannonia, which is slightly to the south, and sometimes they spent also some time to Venice. Eventually they went back to Rome in 867, and in fact Constantine ended up as the metropolitan of Sirmium, another place in Pannonia, and eventually they ended up they died, one of them in Constantinople, the other one in Sirmium in 884. So this is what we have more or less concerning the material provided to us by the hagiography of that period. What you see is, through the hagiography at least, is some kind of a more or less fragmented work, I would say, and a place in which it's really difficult to see how the Byzantines could, have some kind of deeper contact beyond a few sort of commercial exchanges and, unfortunately, military clashes. The puzzling, one of the puzzling incidents is the narrative of Blasius of Amorion, I think, yes, St. Blasius of Amorion, who for some reason starts from Asia Minor and then he goes to Rome using a route that passes by the river Danube. And this is something of a puzzle for the simple reason that this is the only case in which the river Danube, in fact, appears in these hagiographies. The usual route was from Constantinople to, the Buthrind, someplace here, through the Via Egnatia, which crossed these lines. Okay, but in any case, this is what we have. Not much. But what is really interesting is that since then, and I will close with that, much has happened. Sorry, let me give some perspective. Much has happened, and in the centuries after that period, the Balkan world may have been a little more fragmented, with the incursion of the Ottoman Turks, especially after the 13th century, after the 13th, I would say the year 1300, and the expansion of the Serbians and other nationalities. It becomes more fragmented, but once the Ottoman Empire is established, this fragmentation somehow subsides. It is no accident that involves a leap of at least 700 years, not 700, sorry, 400 or 500 years from the main focus of my topic. It's no accident that the first neo-martyr that is recorded in the rather, let's say, incomplete martyrologion of Nicolas Agioritis. First martyr, let me just, okay, yes. The first martyr recorded by Nicolas Agioritis is Saint John, Agios Ioannis, who martyred in Asprokastron, the White Castle, or Ackerman, someplace in Romania, if I'm not wrong. Is it so? Please help me here. What is the White Castle? It should be somewhere here. I don't remember, or to the north. Anyway, so this is the first one, and shows that this kind of fragmented word has become a little more integrated, and north is just one more part of the former Byzantine world. The Black Sea, in fact, is one of the major areas in which neo-martyrs do live and meet their death. 1492 is the first martyr in the Asprokastron, as it is called in Greek, and there are numerous others, such as the Serbian St. George, or some others like saints or neo-martyrs from Russia, for example, or the St. John the Walachian, or Vlachos in Greek, who martyred in 1662, and so on. The thing is that by that time, and even earlier actually, after that is the apostolic work of Cyril and Methodius, hagiography ceases from looking north, because simply hagiography starts being created in the north. This is all I had. Thank you very much indeed.